Flames roared where my truck used to be. Sirens screamed, red lights flashing across the cul-de-sac. I could taste smoke, blood, and disbelief. Someone lay on the pavement motionless, half hidden under a tarp. My hands were shaking, covered in soot, when I heard the HOA president yell, "This is your fault." And maybe she was right. Because 10 minutes earlier, she tried to tow a SWAT vehicle, thinking it was mine. And now, someone was dead. It all started 3 days before the explosion. I remember that morning too clearly, like a cruel joke my memory keeps replaying. The sun was shining, kids were riding bikes, sprinklers hissed on perfect green lawns. Our neighborhood was one of those places that pretended to be safe. The kind of place where people waved but watched each other from behind blinds. I'd lived there for 5 years, never had trouble, until she showed up. Her name was Margaret Holmes, the new HOA president. Tall, tight smile, the kind of woman who wore sunglasses even in the shade. She walked like she owned every driveway. She said she just wanted to bring order. But that word order became poison. She printed new parking rules, new nose limits, even new colors for trash cans. You'd think she was running a prison, not a community. Everyone hated her, but no one dared to fight back. Everyone except me. See? I'm a mechanic. I fix engines, rebuild trucks, and sometimes work with law enforcement. I don't ask questions, I just keep things running. A few weeks before, one of my clients from the SWAT division asked if he could store his armored truck in my driveway for a few days. They were operating gear, waiting on a new facility. No problem, I said. I had the space, and I trusted the guy. He told me, don't touch it, don't open it, and definitely don't move it. Fine by me. So the black truck sat there big, intimidating, with tinted windows and reinforced panels. Neighbors whispered, curious. Margaret, though, she hated it. She said it lowered property value. I told her to relax, it was temporary, but she wasn't the kind to relax. Every time she walked past, she'd stop, take pictures, and shake her head like I'd parked a missile. On the third morning, she finally snapped. I was in my garage, welding, when I heard her shrill voice. You can't keep that here. I wiped sweat off my face and walked out. She stood in front of the truck with a clipboard, a man from the towing company beside her. The guy looked nervous. Margaret, I said, keeping my voice calm. That's not my vehicle. You touch it, you'll regret it. She smirked. Everything parked on your property is your responsibility. HOA rules. I told her again it wasn't mine, and she didn't have clearance. She didn't care. She raised her phone, snapped another photo, and said, then you'll pay the fine. I wanted to laugh, but something about her eyes made me stop. She looked excited, like she wanted a fight. That night, someone left a printed notice on my door. Your vehicle violates HOA Section 8.2. Unauthorized commercial equipment. $500 fine. Pay within 24 hours. I crumpled the paper, threw it away, and didn't sleep. The next morning, I noticed something strange. The SWAT truck had been moved, just slightly 2 feet forward, like someone tried to push it but gave up. I checked the locks, still sealed. No signs of forced entry, but deep down, I knew Margaret had something to do with it. That day, I called Officer Daniels, the SWAT guy who owned the truck. He laughed when I told him what was happening. She's lucky that thing's empty, he said. If she tried to open it, she'd set off a security alert. I froze. Security alert? I asked. Yeah, the truck's got internal sensors. If someone tries to tamper with it, the system logs it. It also activates the secondary lock. Only I can disable it. That made me feel better until I saw her again that evening, standing near the truck with a flashlight, writing something down. I shouted, back away from the vehicle. She jumped, turned, and said, I'm documenting violations. Do it from the sidewalk. She sneered. You think you can intimidate me? I didn't answer. I just stared at her until she left, but it was too late. The line was crossed. The next day, I found another note on my door. Final warning. Vehicle will be towed tomorrow. That's when I realized she wasn't bluffing. I called Daniels again, told him to pick it up before things got messy. He said he'd send a team by morning, but morning came, and so did the tow truck before SWAT arrived. I ran outside barefoot, shouting, stop. You can't tow that. Margaret was there, standing beside the driver, arms crossed. Rules are rules, she said. The driver hesitated. Ma'am, this looks like a government vehicle. She snapped, It's illegally parked. Tow it. I could see the panic on the guy's face. He didn't want to touch it. He knew something wasn't right. I stood between the truck and the tow cable. You touch that hook, I said, and I swear you'll regret it. Margaret screamed. Move or I'll call the cops. I laughed. Please, do it. She did. 5 minutes later, patrol cars arrived not to arrest me. They looked at the truck, then at me, then at her. What's going on here? The officer asked. Margaret pointed. This man refuses to comply with HOA rules. He's hiding some kind of military vehicle. The cop sighed. Ma'am, that's a SWAT unit's property. You can't tow that. Her face went white. Excuse me? He repeated it slowly. That's police property. You touch it, and you're interfering with an active investigation. I'll never forget the silence that followed. Margaret turned, trembling, realizing what she'd almost done. Then she whispered, You think this scares me? You'll see what real power looks like. That's when I should have walked away. But I didn't, because part of me wanted to see how far she'd go. That night, someone broke into my garage. I woke to the sound of broken glass. My heart punched my ribs. The garage light was off. My hands found the flashlight on the workbench by habit. I moved slow. Every floorboard beneath me shouted. The night smelled like Oland rain. I rounded the corner and the garage door was open a crack. I nearly threw up. Tools were scattered. The floor had been dragged through. Something cold kissed my ankle. A shard of glass. I crouched. Dust fell from the rafters. There were prints. Large, boot prints. They led to the SWAT truck. My breath caught. The truck still sat there, silent and black. A bolt had been loosened near the rear axle. Someone had tried to tamper with the wheel. I went numb. Narrator. Me. I grabbed my phone. No service in the garage for some reason. My thumbs shook as I tried again. Finally one bar. I called Officer Daniels. It went straight to voicemail. My stomach rolled. I called again. This time, a text came. On my way. Stay back. Relief hit like a balloon popping. Then I noticed the note on my workbench. Clean cut. White card. Just 3 words. You were warned. I slammed my hand on the bench. My knuckles stung. Fear turned hot and loud in my ears. I wrapped a towel around the cut on my palm and sat on an overturned bucket. I tried to tell myself it was intimidation, that she wanted to scare me. But the bolt, the prints, someone knew how to mess with a vehicle without setting off a security alert. Narrator. Me. I thought about Margaret. I hated that she had the keys to everyone's tiny resentments. She'd pushed and pushed. Now the push had teeth. Coming up. The first surveillance. The first camera I found had been cleverly hidden. It was in a fake rock, placed under a hydrangea, a cheap lens, but aimed right at my garage door. Someone had been watching me sleep. I picked it up with gloved hands. The weight of it felt like evidence. I went down my neighbor's side yard. Their curtains were shut. The next house porch light was off. I banged on their door. No answer. I walked the cul-de-sac and felt watched. Every lawn furniture shadow looked like a face. A kid's bicycle lay on its side, near the mailbox its chain chewed through. I looked up at the streetlights. They hummed like something waiting to pounce. Narrator. Me. The next morning, I tried to sleep but the night's noises kept replaying. I dialed Daniels again. This time he picked up. His voice was calm and flat. Hold tight, he said. We're sweeping the area. Did you see the prints? I asked. No, he said. But we'll run a perimeter. A perimeter. The word gave me a stupid, fragile hope. I told him about the camera. He sighed. Good call keeping it, he said. Don't touch anything else. I agreed. I walked outside like a ghost all day. People stared when I passed. Margaret waved from her mailbox like nothing had happened. Her smile said, I told you. I hated her so much I tasted metal. Narrator. Me. Hours crawled. Then another knock on my door. It was Lisa from across the street. Her eyes were wide. I saw 2 men last night, she whispered. She said what? I echoed. Black hoodies, she said. Late. They left in a dark sedan. I felt the floor tilt. What did they do? I asked. Looked around. Near your garage, she said. How long? Maybe 10 minutes, she murmured. I thanked her and closed the door gently. The wood felt thin like paper. I sat against it for a long time. My mind flipped through worst-case scenarios, like a deck of cards. Who were they? What did they want? Narrator. Me. I started keeping a notebook. Short lines, simple sentences, time. Who? What? It became my lifeline. 3:12 a.m. Garage opened. 3:14 a.m. Unknown boots. 3:20 a.m. Note. I pinned the camera to my bulletin board. I emailed the footage to Daniels, but the file was corrupted. Someone had sabotaged the recording. Now they were cleaning their tracks. That little detail made my chest hollow. If you want to make someone feel small, take away proof. I began to hear phantom knocks. I installed an alarm, cheap and loud. It gave me something to do. A ritual. Narrator. Me. 2 days passed. Every knock felt heavier. Margaret made her rounds, clipboard in hand. She spoke to me once through the hedges. Community standards, she said like a prayer. You'll see how things get fixed. Her smile was a blade. I wanted to tell her everything. I wanted to scream that she'd poked a hornet's nest. But I didn't. I breathed. I watched. I reinforced padlocks. I bought motion lights. I slashed the tires on an old sedan in my driveway just so I'd have something to start with. I felt ridiculous, but the motion lights caught nothing at night. They lit the cul-de-sac in sterile white. They made shadows obvious and uglier. Narrator. Me. On the 5th night, the ashtray in my truck was tipped over. Smoky handprints on the dashboard. Someone had been inside. I almost cried with anger. I left a note on Margaret's door that night. It was one of those impulsive things that felt right in the heat of it. It read, "Stop. You're escalating this." I slid it under her mat. The next morning it was gone. A message from her appeared on the whole board. "We will not be intimidated. Community rules are for everyone." She added 3 stars after the sentence like punctuation and a threat. The neighborhood WhatsApp group lit up. People chose sides in silent messages and short emojis. Some stood with Margaret. Some sent private messages to me asking if I was okay. Nobody wanted to host a meeting. Fear is an effective meeting killer. Narrator. Me. Coming up, an unexpected ally, and the first public confrontation. Because the world needs witnesses. Officer Daniels finally came with 2 other officers and a cold stare. They walked the cul-de-sac and took notes like they were studying a crime scene. He stayed longer than usual. We sat on overturned buckets. He told me his team thought this was intimidation. "Someone's sending a message," he said softly. "What message?" I asked. "That you should move the vehicle. That you should back down." I laughed, a dry laugh. "Why would I back down?" I said. "Because you think you're alone," he said. "Because people in this neighborhood mind their own shit more than they mind injustice." The word stung. He left me his card. "Call if anything else happens," he said. I didn't know what to do with the car. It felt small and inadequate. Narrator. Me. But things got worse. A week in, my mail slot filled with small threats. A dead mouse in a plastic bag. A drawing of a noose. Keys on a string left on my gate. I started sleeping with the door locked and the chains on. Every creak became an intruder. I began carrying my flashlight to bed like armor. The neighborhood began to hum with rumor. At the corner store someone said, I'd been seen arguing with Margaret. Another person said my truck was an eyesore. Someone else said I was making a fuss. I felt isolated and exposed. I went to the HOA meeting that Tuesday because I wanted to face Margaret. It was 2 hours of petty grievances and a lot of small teeth. She spoke with a lectern voice that warmed the room like steam. When it came to open floor, I stood. I told them what had happened. I showed pictures of the boot prints. I showed the broken camera. Half the room looked away. Half the room clucked and folded their hands. Margaret smiled and said she'd seen no evidence of wrongdoing. She called it an unfortunate disagreement. And the entire room accepted the phrase. Narrator. Me. I did something I hadn't expected. I recorded the meeting. I put my phone on the table and let it roll. When it ended, a woman I barely knew walked up to me. Her name was Rosa. She had a small scar above her lip and eyes the color of storm water. She said she'd been watching. She'd seen the men. She said she had photos from her porch camera that might help. My hands shook as I took the memory card. Rosa didn't want attention. She just wanted to see justice. We walked back to my place in silence. It felt like being part of an alliance that hadn't yet formed. Narrator. Me. That night I reviewed Rosa's footage. 2 figures. Dark coats. Hoods up. 3:10 a.m. They moved like professionals. They carried a toolkit. They tried 3 different tours. They stopped by my truck. One of them crouched and looked right into the camera for a second. I froze. The face blurred by the hood, but the eyes, I could feel them. They looked bored. They looked cruel. I switched the footage off and sat in the dark until dawn. The truth is that watching something like that makes you a different person. You cannot unsee the intention. You only see future possibilities. Narrator: me. Coming up, a public humiliation and the message that changes everything. The next afternoon, a flyer appeared on every mailbox. A printed page with my truck's photo and a headline: "Dangerous neighbor. Keep your children away." There was a forged police emblem on the bottom. My name, my address, a few lies about complaints. People looked at it and then at me. A woman crossed the street when I approached. Her voice was low and sharp. "You should leave, for the kids." I laughed, but it sounded like glass. I wanted to set the flyers on fire. Instead, I pulled them up and marched to Margaret's house. She answered the door like a priestess. "Those flyers were not authorized by the HOA," she said, ice cold. "Who did it?" I demanded. She shrugged. "Someone who cares about the community." Her hands were steady. I felt rage like a physical thing. I wanted to break the door. I wanted to smash windows until the cul-de-sac looked like something honest had happened. Instead, I left. Narrator: me. That night I slept with the truck running. I kept the desk lamp on and the radio loud. I think I wanted to be loud enough to scare something away. I wanted to be nosy enough that a coward in a hood could not find a place to work. Sometime around 2 in the morning, a shadow moved near my fence. I grabbed my flashlight and stepped outside. A car door slammed. Headlights cut the yard. A voice shouted, "Get down." People poured into the front yards like actors called to a scene. Daniel's patrol rolled up with spotlights and a sound like a growl. They ordered everyone to the sidewalk. There was shouting. Then we heard the crack. A gunshot. Nobody in my neighborhood had any business hearing a gunshot that close. People screamed. Dog barks rose into the night like a chorus of fear. Daniels yelled into his radio. Hostiles retreating follow. They ran toward the dark sedan. It peeled out, leaving to flat tires and a bad paint job. One of the hooded men lay on the curb, groaning. His hood had slid back. I stared. It was someone I sort of knew. Not a neighbor, someone from a town over. His face was full of thin veins and cheap tattoos. He blinked at me with confusion more than pain. He spat blood and muttered, "You're the one." The officers cuffed him. The neighborhood held its breath. Narrator: me. Later, Daniels pulled me aside. "You should have let us handle it earlier," he said quietly. "Maybe," I answered, "but you were late." He looked at me like he was choosing his words. "You put yourself in the line of fire," he said. I didn't know if he meant literally. "Who hired them?" I asked. He shrugged. "We're looking into it." The hooded man, once awake, refused to talk. He kept repeating a name that sounded like Margaret. "You want to tell me?" I asked him in a hallway. He spat and smiled. "Who would you tell?" he said. "The HOA." Everyone in the precinct laughed, but the kind that lives in throats and not mouths. They let him go on a technicality that smelled like a deal. He walked out with 2 officers watching. One of them locked eyes with me and said, "Stay safe." I realized that in this town, those words mean both a blessing and a threat. Narrator: me. I started losing faith in the thin lines between neighbor and enemy. The cul-de-sac seemed to have been waiting for a fight it didn't know how to admit. People started closing curtains like shields. Rosa stopped answering her phone for a week. Margaret sent out another memo about community security. It read like triumph. I wondered what would come next. Would they escalate again? Who fed them the courage to act like that? And the strangest question of all, who actually wanted the SWAT truck gone that badly? Coming up, a discovery in the truck that would ruin everything we thought we knew. But that's for the next segment. Question left open. Who hired the hooded man? And what will happen when we check the SWAT truck next? Morning came to quiet, to bright, the kind of brightness that burns the eyes after a night that shouldn't have happened. The cul-de-sac was still littered with shell casings and yellow police tape. Kids stayed inside. Dogs barked at nothing. And Margaret, she was out there, watering her plants like the world hadn't cracked in half the night before. I stood on my porch with a cup of cold coffee, watching her pretend nothing had happened. She wore white gloves. Perfect, clean. She looked up once, and I swear she smiled at me, like she just won something. Daniels hadn't called back. SWAT had taken their wounded guy away. And the whole situation got buried faster than it made sense. No one mentioned the shots, or the men, or why the police had vanished before dawn. The HOA email thread said it was a fireworks incident. That's how they erased reality. And me. I hadn't slept. Every sound felt loaded. Every car that slowed near my house made my pulse jump. I kept thinking if Margaret really was behind all this, she'd just proven she could get away with anything. If you're wondering who's talking, yeah, it's still me. The guy with the truck that started all this. The idiot who thought rules meant something. I walked over to the vehicle again that afternoon. The black paint still shimmered with dust and fingerprints. It looked wrong now, like a monument to something I didn't understand. Daniels had said it was safe, but the night before, someone had touched it again. The mud near the rear wheels had fresh tracks smaller than boots, maybe shoes. Someone light, fast, someone who knew where to step. The back latch was slightly open, just an inch, enough to make my throat tighten. I pressed my palm against the cold metal. The hinge creaked. It shouldn't have. I took a step back. That's when I noticed the smell. Burnt plastic, something chemical. Not from my tools. Not from the street, from inside the truck. I backed up and called Daniels again. Voicemail. I left a message that started con and ended like a scream. Someone's been in your vehicle, and I'm not waiting anymore. I paced the driveway until dusk. The neighborhood looked normal again, like the night had never existed, but the silence was lying. Coming up something I swore I'd never do, because curiosity kills faster than fear. Around 10 p.m., I got a message. Unknown number. It said, "You shouldn't have kept it on your property." No name, no signature, just that one line. My stomach dropped, because whoever sent it knew exactly what it meant. I walked outside again, flashlight trembling in my hand. Margaret's house was dark. The street was empty. The tape from the police had already been peeled away. I approached the truck and circled it once. The padlock on the rear latch was gone. In its place, a new one. Heavier. Cleaner. Someone had swapped it. I crouched. In the dirt below the bumper, something glinted. A small metal plate. Numbers etched in rows. Not a license. Not a VIN. A code tag, military issue. I took a photo. Sent it to Daniels. Still no reply. If you've ever been in a moment where your gut says run, but your mind says look closer, you'll know what I felt. I opened my garage, grabbed a crowbar, and stood behind the truck for what felt like an hour. The wind shifted. The neighborhood lights blinked out for a second. Total blackout. Only my flashlight beam cutting through the dark. And then I did it. I pried the latch open. Metal screamed. Inside, black crates, stacked and strapped tight. No labels, no seals, just stenciled numbers and the faint smell of fuel. I pulled one crate halfway out. It was heavy, maybe 50 pounds. I found a screwdriver, wedged it under the lid, and lifted. Inside, no weapons, no tools, just rows of small silver devices, like detonators, and one was blinking red. I dropped the lid. The blink stopped. I froze. I couldn't breathe. If you're thinking I'm exaggerating, I wish I was. There was something alive in that moment, some pulse that wasn't mine. Coming up, what I found taped under that same crate. But let me tell you this first. That night changed everything. I ran inside, grabbed my keys, ready to drive anywhere. But my phone buzzed again. New message. Don't move it again. We're watching. I looked out the window. A single red dot shimmered across my living room wall. Laser. Someone had me in their sights. I hit the floor. The beam vanished. I crawled to the back door, heart slamming against my ribs. I could hear an engine idling somewhere near the cul-de-sac. Low, patient, predatory. Minutes passed. Then nothing. Silence. No footsteps. No light. When I actually stood up, I realized I was still gripping the crowbar like a weapon. My hands ached. My knuckles were white. I whispered to myself, "This is insane." And maybe it was. But insanity was safer than ignorance now. I didn't call the cops again. I didn't call Daniels either. I went back to the truck and stared at it until sunrise. The red blink inside the crate had turned off completely. But I knew what I'd seen, and I knew someone had switched that crate while I was sleeping. By the next morning, Margaret's house had new security cameras on every corner. Brand new, high-tech. Too fast to install overnight unless she'd planned it all along. Neighbors started whispering again, this time louder. They said I'd brought danger into the neighborhood, that my military truck was cursed, that it was connected to the shooting. People avoid my yard like it was radioactive. I decided to test something. I left a note on Margaret's windshield. We need to talk. Alone. No threats. Just that. She didn't reply for a day. Then another note appeared under my door. Midnight. By the truck. Coming up, what happened when she showed up under that flickering streetlight, wearing black instead of white. But before that, let me remind you, this is still me talking. The same guy who thought a homeowners association was just about lawns and fences. Now I was standing guard over a vehicle full of blinking secrets, wondering which one of us was going to die first. At 11:59, I heard footsteps, slow, deliberate. Margaret stepped into the light. Her eyes were cold, but not surprised. She looked at me, then at the truck, and she said one sentence I'll never forget: "You should have let us tow it." Then she smiled almost kindly and reached into her coat. The sound that followed wasn't thunder, but it carried the same promise. And that's where I'll leave you for now. Because what came after changed everything I thought I knew about that truck and about Margaret. Coming up, what was really inside that SWAT vehicle, and why the HOA president would rather die than let me find out. When I woke up the next morning, the smell of smoke still hung in the air. It clung to my clothes, my walls, my lungs. I hadn't really slept, more like drifted in and out of some half-dream where sirens never stopped. My phone was dead, burned out from the heat. My front yard was taped off like a crime scene, and technically, it was. I opened the door and saw a black SUV parked right across the street. No HOA logo this time. Government plates. Two men in suits stepped out. No badges visible, just that calm, silent confidence of people who didn't need to explain who they were. The taller one raised his chin and said my name. Not loudly, just enough to let me know he already knew everything. "Mr. Reynolds, we need to talk." Their tone wasn't hostile, it was worse. Detached, professional, like they'd already decided what I was. I invited them in because I didn't know what else to do. My hands were trembling a little, and I hated that they noticed. They asked me to describe everything: the truck, the HOA meeting last week, the argument with Karen the president, the explosion. I told them the truth, every bit of it. But the moment I mentioned the towing company, one of them glanced at the other. Just a small glance, but enough for me to catch it. That's when I realized they already knew about the tow order before I even said a word. I paused and said, "You already talked to her, didn't you?" No response. The shorter one flipped a notebook closed. "We just need to clarify one thing. Did you or anyone in your household have prior contact with federal personnel?" "Federal personnel?" I repeated. "What? Like agents?" He didn't blink. "Like anyone who would have access to that truck." The words hit me like a punch. That truck. That cursed SWAT vehicle that turned my life inside out. I told them no, of course not. I don't even know anyone in law enforcement. But even as I said it, a thought flashed through my mind. My brother. He used to be in the military, retired 2 years ago. We barely spoke anymore. But last week, he texted me out of nowhere, asked if I still had space in my driveway for a few days. I thought he was joking. I didn't even respond. And now a SWAT truck had exploded there. Coming up, you're going to find out what was inside that truck, and why it should never have been parked in a neighborhood like mine. The agents thanked me, told me not to leave town, and left without shaking my hand. The moment the door closed, my legs went weak. I sat on the floor and stared at the burn marks outside my window. The quiet was deafening. That's when my phone buzzed, the backup one I never used. A single text from a number with no name. "They know. Don't trust anyone from the HOA." I froze. My heart started pounding again. I looked out the window, scanning the street. Nothing. Just the same black SUV parked 2 houses down. How could they know my number? Who were they? I decided to drive out of the neighborhood for a while, clear my head. But the second I got in my car, I saw something under my windshield wiper. A folded letter in a plastic bag. I opened it. No return address. Just one sentence. "You weren't supposed to see what was in that truck." I read it twice, maybe 3 times, trying to process it. Then I noticed, at the bottom corner, faintly visible through the melted ink, was the HOA logo. That's when I realized Karen wasn't acting alone. Someone higher up had told her to tow it. Someone who wanted that truck gone. I started thinking back. All the HOA meetings, all the sudden new rules about security and unauthorized vehicles. It wasn't random, it was preparation. A cover. Coming up, what I found when I broke into the HOA storage unit that night changed everything. But before that, I had to make a choice. Either sit still and let them build a story around me, or start finding my own answers. And that's the kind of decision you don't come back from. I grabbed my jacket, stepped into the cold air, and headed toward the community office. Every step felt heavier, like I was walking into something way bigger than a neighborhood dispute. By the time I reached the locked door of the HOA building, my pulse was racing. The lights were off, but a faint hum came from inside, like a generator, or maybe a server. I picked the lock with an old trick I learned in college and slipped in. The smell of dust and printer ink hit me first, then the glow. A whole wall of monitors, showing camera feeds from every corner of our neighborhood. Some of them labeled private property, others tagged with addresses, including mine. And one of the feeds showed a live image of my front door. I whispered, "Jesus Christ," and backed away. Then I saw movement on one of the screens. Karen, lying in a hospital bed, hooked up to machines. Someone was standing next to her, talking quietly. The man turned toward the camera for a split second. It was my brother. My throat closed up. My brain refused to believe what my eyes were seeing. He was alive. He was supposed to be halfway across the country. And yet, there he was, next to the woman who almost got him killed. Wide, the lights flickered, and I heard footsteps in the hallway. I killed the monitors and hid behind a filing cabinet. The door creaked open. Two shadows entered. One of them whispered, "He took the bait." And that's when I knew. I wasn't the one investigating anymore. I was the target. I couldn't sleep. Not really. Not after seeing the cameras, the monitors, my own brother standing next to Karen. My mind raced faster than my pulse. Every creak of the house sounded like someone sneaking in. Every shadow on the walls looked like a hooded figure ready to strike. I kept reminding myself, I'm still the one telling this story, the guy whose truck started this nightmare. And now it wasn't about property disputes anymore. It was about survival. I checked the windows for the 100th time. Everything looked normal, calm even. But I knew better. The calm before the storm. My phone buzzed again. Another text from that unknown number. "You move, we move. Don't think we won't find you." I threw the phone across the room. I didn't want to believe it, but deep down, I knew they already had. Coming up, you'll see exactly how I discovered the first tale, and how close they were. I grabbed a flashlight and my keys. Time to make rounds outside, to feel for any unusual footprints, any odd sounds. As I stepped onto the porch, I noticed a small red dot near the edge of my driveway. Laser. Someone had me in their sights, no doubt. My stomach turned. I ducked behind my truck, my heartbeat deafening in my ears. This wasn't paranoia. I could see it, a shadow moving along the street, crouched low. Then it stopped. I froze. The red dot disappeared. I crept to the edge of the porch, trying to get a look. A figure in black slipped behind the neighbor's SUV. Too fast, too precise. Whoever it was, they knew what they were doing. Not a thug, a professional. Coming up, the first confrontation that almost ended me. I grabbed my crowbar again, just in case. I told myself it was for reassurance. Mostly, it was to make noise if they try anything. I circled the driveway slowly, flashlight sweeping across every corner. Everything looked quiet, too quiet. Then a car engine rumbled low behind the trees. I froze. My pulse spiked. My body wanted to run, but my brain screamed, "Observe first." A black sedan slid into view. Tinted windows, no plates visible. It stopped a few houses down. Two figures got out. Hoodies, gloves, moving with that same silent precision. My stomach sank. They were scouting. Testing. I didn't have time to think. I ducked back behind the truck and watched them. They didn't notice me. Not yet. But I knew. If they were this careful, it wasn't about intimidation. It was reconnaissance. The wind shifted. One of them glanced my way. I held my breath, telling myself, I am still the one in control. I am still the narrator of my own story. But the truth was, I felt small, expendable. I waited, and waited, every second stretching into eternity. Then, they split up. One moved toward my backyard, near the SWAT truck site. The other circled toward the front. I realized then, I wasn't going to catch them. I had no weapons, no reinforcements, just fear and a flashlight. And that was enough to make me invisible. I slowly backed inside, heart hammering, locking every door, checking every window. But I knew, they weren't done. They had marked me. They were patient. Coming up, what happens when they finally make their move, and how I barely escape with my life. I sat in the dark, listening. Every creak in the house was amplified. Every rustle outside sounded like footsteps approaching. I imagined them, crouched in the shadows, studying me, calculating, waiting for the perfect moment. Minutes turned into hours. My nerves frayed. My thoughts spun. Who were they working for? Margaret? Someone higher? Or did the SWAT truck really carry something so valuable they'd risk blowing up a neighborhood? At 3 a.m., I heard the sound of the front door handle rattling. My blood ran cold. They were trying to get in. I grabbed my crowbar, flashlight in the other hand, ready for whatever came through. The door shook again, and then a whisper, barely audible, "It's just us. We're not here to hurt you." Yet, my pulse jumped. Who? How did they get inside? I swung the flashlight toward the shadow, and saw nothing. Then the sound of footsteps running down the stairs, behind me. I spun around, swinging the crowbar. The figure was gone. I bolted to the back door, flung it open, and ran into the backyard. The night was thick and heavy. The red glow from the truck's remains reflected off the wet grass. And there, standing under the moonlight, two silhouettes froze. They didn't move, they just watched. I took off running down the alley, hearing the crunch of gravel behind me. Then a single shot rang out. It hit the fence a foot from my shoulder. I stumbled, nearly falling. My breath ripped out of me. Coming up, the chase continues, and the truth about who's behind all this is closer than I ever imagined. I didn't stop. I couldn't. I ran through the darkness, heart slamming, mind screaming. Somewhere in the shadows, they were following. Somewhere, the truck wasn't just a truck anymore. It was a symbol, a key, a reason to kill. And that night, I realized, survival wasn't about being brave. It was about being fast, smart, and unpredictable. I ran through the alley, boots slapping against the wet pavement. The shadows behind me stretched and twisted like living things. Every step sounded like a drum in my skull. My chest burned, my lungs screamed, but I didn't stop. I couldn't. If you're wondering who's talking, it's still me. The guy whose truck brought the apocalypse to a quiet cul-de-sac. The guy who should have been counting HOA complaints, not running for his life. The alley opened into the main street. Streetlights flickered. I could hear them. Two sets of footsteps. Careful. Synchronized. Someone whispered my name. My stomach flipped. I ducked into a side yard. A chain-link fence rattled nearby. I froze. One of them passed. Black hoodie. Gloves. Moving with lethal precision. I counted my heartbeats. 1, 2, 3. Until he was gone. Coming up, you'll see how I realized they weren't just after me. I kept moving, silent, shadow to shadow. My phone buzzed again. Unknown number. The text was simple. Stop running. You'll make it worse. I laughed, but it came out as a wheeze. Worse? It already was worse. I could feel it. I turned the corner too sharply and slammed into something cold. A hand grabbed my shoulder. I spun. Crowbar raised. A man in a dark suit stepped back, calm in a way that made me hate him instantly. He said, "Relax, we're not here to hurt you. Not here to hurt me." I spat. "Who the hell are you?" "Federal agents, but we can't tell you our names." "Not yet. You need to come with us." I hesitated. Every instinct screamed no, but I was out of options. Whoever had sent the first texts, whoever had blown up the truck, whoever was tracking me, they knew the neighborhood, my moves, my fears. I didn't stand a chance alone. Coming up, the real reason why the SWAT truck was there, and why my life is now a pawn in a much larger game. We ran. Yes, ran. Down streets, through empty lots, over fences. Every shadow looked like another enemy. I felt like I'd been living in a nightmare for weeks, and this was the crescendo. The agent didn't explain much, only gave directions and kept glancing over his shoulder. "They're everywhere. They've been watching since the truck arrived. They know your brother, your neighbor, and your moves." My blood ran cold. "They know my brother, yes, and your HOA president is part of it, whether you like it or not." We reached a car. Bulletproof. Black. No plates. I climbed in, slammed the door. Engine roared. Tires screeched. I didn't breathe until we hit the main road. They explained a little on the way. The truck had been carrying sensitive devices, military grade, some sort of tracking and surveillance gear. Not for general SWAT use. Classified. Explosives were involved. And someone inside the HOA had tipped off the wrong people. I tried to take it in. My neighbor, my HOA president, my brother somehow connected, all spinning like a tornado of betrayal and danger. Coming up, how I learned the horrifying truth about Margaret's role, and why she would go to any length to remove the truck. They slowed near an abandoned warehouse. Dark, windows boarded up. "We can't stop here long," one agent whispered. "But you need to see this." Inside, dozens of monitors. Every camera from the neighborhood, every alley, every driveway. Some feeds were live, some recorded. And on the screen, my brother, Karen, and a third figure, someone I didn't recognize, wearing a mask. The agent said, "This is why they wanted the truck gone. They needed it out of your sight. And now you're involved." My hands shook. "Why me?" He didn't answer. Only pointed to the screens. "Because you're the one who saw it first. And once you see, you can't unsee. You're part of this now." The masked figure on the monitor turned slowly, looking directly at the camera. I knew those eyes. Someone I trusted. Someone I thought was gone. Suddenly, alarms blared. Red lights flashed. The warehouse was under attack. I realized my life had just turned into a chessboard, and I was the piece they were all aiming at. Coming up, the warehouse siege, the first real confrontation with Margaret, and the moment I have to make a choice that could end everything. I crouched, pressed against a steel crate. Gunfire echoed outside. Sparks flew from electrical boxes. The agents covered me. I whispered to myself, heart racing. This is it. No turning back. The warehouse smelled of smoke and fear. Every echo of footsteps felt like a countdown. I stayed pressed against the crates, watching the monitors. And then I saw her. Margaret, white gloves gone, black suit, hair slicked back, eyes cold as steel. She was walking calmly through the chaos outside, directing people like a conductor of destruction. If you're wondering who's talking, it's still me. The guy whose HOA president turned out to be more dangerous than anyone could imagine. The guy whose life is a live wire right now. One of the agents whispered, "You need to see her. She knows why the truck was there." I swallowed. I didn't want to go. I didn't want to face her, but I had no choice. Coming up, the moment I finally see why she wanted the truck gone. We approached her through the side door. She looked up and smiled. Not kind, not friendly. The kind of smile that promised pain. "You shouldn't have touched it," she said, her voice calm. Too calm. "But now that you have, I guess we need to talk." I stepped forward. My crowbar was useless here. My fists felt useless, my heart pounding like a drum. "Talk. You blew up my truck. People could have died." She tilted her head. "It's not your truck. You think it's yours. You're just a pawn. Do you know what's inside?" I shook my head. She motioned behind her to black crates, identical to the ones I'd seen. The red blinking devices inside. Lev. Ticking. Dangerous. "They were never meant for you," she said. "Or your neighborhood. Or anyone who doesn't understand. And now you've seen too much." I felt rage, confusion, fear. A tornado of emotions I couldn't control. "You used me. You manipulated everyone," I shouted. Her smile widened. "I did what had to be done. You can neither help me now, or walk away and watch everyone you care about die." My stomach dropped. A classic dilemma. No good options. Both choices painful. If I help her, I become complicit. I risk lives. I might survive. Maybe. If I refuse, my brother, the agents, maybe even innocent neighbors could be targets. Coming up, the impossible decision, and how I chose my path. I clenched my fists. I thought about my brother on the monitor. I thought about the agents who trusted me, and the SWAT truck, and the leaves hanging in balance. I made my choice. "Fine," I said. "I'll help. But not your way." Her eyes narrowed. "Oh? I like that. Very interesting. We'll see how interesting you are when things get complicated." Suddenly, a shot rang out outside. Sparks flew across the walls. The building shook. The agents dove for cover. I realized my choice hadn't saved me. It had thrown me directly into the fire. We moved to the crates. I grabbed one, pulled it toward a safer corner. Margaret followed, watching, calculating. Every step felt like walking a tightrope over a pit of knives. I whispered under my breath, "This is insane. All of it. Every single thing." And then, she said something that froze me. "You have no idea who's really pulling the strings." I looked at her, tried to read her face, tried to find the humanity in those eyes. Nothing. Coming up, what happens when the second team shows up, and the warehouse turns into a full-blown battleground? Before I could react, alarms blared again. Red lights flashing. A helicopter hovered above. Guns fired from outside. Margaret smiled, almost enjoying it. I realized this wasn't just about the truck anymore. It was about control, about power, about who survives. And that night, I understood one thing. In this game, no one was on my side. The first shots hit the walls. Concrete dust rained down, making me cough. Margaret didn't flinch. She just moved like she owned the battlefield, directing shadows in black suits, everyone moving in sync. My heart hammered. I kept reminding myself, this is me, alive, standing in the middle of a war zone I never signed up for. The helicopter above spun its spotlight across the warehouse. Its beam caught us, burned into our eyes. Outside, more figures dropped from the darkness, tactical gear, faces hidden, guns ready. The second team had arrived. Not HOA, not SWAT. Something else, someone else, coming up. How I realize I've been caught between two deadly forces, and why there's no way out. I grabbed a crate, the one with the red blinking devices inside. The weight felt like Lee. My hands shook. I didn't know if I could move fast enough. The agents beside me took cover. One shouted, "You have to move it, now." Margaret waved her hand. "Let them come. Let's see who survives." Her eyes glimmered in the half-light, a predator enjoying the chaos. The first gunfire broke a window. Shards exploded across the floor. I ducked behind a metal support beam. My crowbar useless, my fists useless, my mind racing. The crates were heavy, ticking, dangerous. Every second, the thought that one wrong move could detonate everything made my hands sweat. I caught sight of my brother on one of the monitors. He wasn't hurt, but he was moving carefully, trying to help someone behind the crates. My stomach dropped. If he got hit, if even one bullet struck him, I couldn't forgive myself. The agents returned fire. Bullets ricocheted. Sparks flew. Smoke filled the warehouse. I had to make a choice: stay here and try to help control the crates, or run to the back exit to find safety. Coming up, the moment that changes everything. When the crates start to move on their own, I yelled at Margaret, "We need to stabilize these. They're live." She didn't answer. Instead, one of her people dragged a second crate into the center. I realized with horror, she wasn't just defending herself. She wanted to provoke whoever was outside. The air filled with the sound of boots, screams, gunfire, and alarms. I moved, running between support beams, dragging the crate behind me. It burned my hands, heavy and alive. I tripped. The crate slid. My pulse skyrocketed. Outside, the second team began advancing. I could see silhouettes through the shattered windows. Too fast, too coordinated. They weren't HOA. They weren't SWAT. They were professionals. Mercenaries. My brother yelled from the monitors, "Move it to the corner. Hurry." I obeyed, dragging the crate, cursing under my breath. Every shadow felt like it was about to crush me. Coming up, the first real loss, and the moment I realized the stakes are higher than I thought. One of the black-suited figures outside threw a grenade through the broken window. Sparks, fire, a deafening explosion. Glass and concrete rained down. The crate slipped from my hands. Red lights blinked rapidly. Margaret screamed, not in fear, but exhilaration. "Now you see what happens when you touch things you shouldn't." I lunged, catching the crate just before it hit the floor. My hands burned. My back ached. I felt something snap inside me. Adrenaline, terror, determination all in one. The second team stormed the interior. Shots rang out. Agents fell back. Smoke everywhere. I realized then, my choice to cooperate had thrown me directly into the crossfire. I wasn't surviving by helping. I was surviving by sheer luck. Coming up, the moment I make a decision that changes everything, and why Margaret's plan might finally backfire. I looked at the monitors again. My brother was still alive, but tense, focused. I realized I couldn't wait for someone else to save us. Not the agents. Not the mysterious second team. Not Margaret. I clenched my fists. I moved toward the crates, determined. If this was the end, I was going to face it on my terms. The warehouse shook again. Sparks flew. I could feel the heat on my face. And then I saw a figure reach for the crate. Margaret herself, smiling. I yelled, "Stop." She looked at me, eyes wide. Not with fear, but with recognition. "You're not just a pawn," she said. And in that instant, I understood. This wasn't about the truck. It wasn't about HOA rules. It was about control, power, survival. I had to act. And that action would change everything. The warehouse was chaos. Smoke, Sparks, gunfire, a storm of noise and fear. I pressed against a metal support beam, clutching the crate. My hands burned. My chest ached. My heart raced like a drum in a war zone. I reminded myself, it's still me telling this story. The guy who never signed up for a life-or-death game between HOA, SWAT, and unknown mercenaries. The guy whose truck brought all this down. Margaret stepped closer, eyes calculating, every move precise. You think you understand, but you don't, she said. I didn't answer. I knew talking would get me killed. I had to act. Coming up, why the crate was more dangerous than anyone imagined. The red lights inside the crate blinked faster. It wasn't just ticking. It was alive, in a way I couldn't understand. The agents shouted instructions, but the mercenaries were closing in, their footsteps echoing like a death march. I had a choice: fight, run, or somehow manipulate what was in the crate. I lunged for the second crate. Margaret moved to intercept me. Our bodies collided. I pushed, shoved, using every ounce of strength. Sparks flew as metal scraped metal. Then a shot rang out. One of the mercenaries fired blindly. The bullet hit the concrete floor, ricocheted. A spark hit the crate. Red lights flared, faster than before. My stomach dropped. Coming up, the moment the crate revealed its contents, I pried the lid open, desperate. Inside, rows of silver devices, not weapons, not explosives. Tiny surveillance drones, military grade, capable of reconnaissance, hacking, tracking. That was the classified secret. And they weren't inactive. One activated. Buzzing. Red light scanning. Margaret froze. For a fraction of a second, I saw surprise, or maybe fear, in her eyes. I grabbed the device closest to me, smashed it against the floor. Sparks flew. Circuits shorted. The device fell silent. One by one, I destroyed the drones. Each time, I felt the room breathe, as if the warehouse itself was aware of my actions. The mercenaries realized their advantage was gone. They hesitated. The agents moved in, but I was already ahead, pushing Margaret toward the exit. She resisted, screaming orders to her team. Coming up, the choice that will decide who survives. A shot rang out from above. I ducked. My brother, using a side ladder, dropped down, taking cover behind a crate. We made eye contact. Relief, fear, and trust mixed in one glance. I had to decide. Stop Margaret now, or let her go and risk her coming back. Every second stretched like eternity. I charged. She swung at me with a metal rod. I dodged, slammed her shoulder into a wall. The agents moved to handcuff her. She screamed, but not in pain. Anger, frustration. She wasn't finished. The final drone, still alive, buzzed. I kicked it, sending it smashing into a wall. Sparks rained down. The warehouse shook. Everyone froze. The threat was neutralized. Margaret was cuffed. Mercenaries retreated. The agents secured the crates. My brother and I leaned against the wall, chest heaving. Coming up, the aftermath, and the shocking twist no one saw coming. I looked around. The warehouse was a ruin. Smoke hung thick. The crates, destroyed. The drones, dead. Margaret glared at me from the floor. I realized something chilling. The truck, the HOA, the SWAT connection. It had all been a small piece of a much larger operation. A test. A trap. And we were the ones who had survived it. But surviving came with consequences. Names would be called, truths revealed, loyalties tested, and the neighborhood, once quiet, would never be the same. I whispered to myself, exhausted, alive, this is only the beginning. The warehouse was silent. Smoke curling in slow spirals, broken glass, twisted metal. I sat against a wall. My hands shook. My brother beside me, quiet. Agents moving in shadows. Margaret in cuffs. I kept thinking, how did it come to this? Everything I knew was gone. My neighborhood, my sense of safety, the truck, the drones, even my own understanding of who was friend and who was enemy. I whispered to myself, I thought I was in control. I thought I chose, but maybe control was never mine. The night outside felt different. Heavier. Watching. Waiting. The air smelled of smoke and fear and something else. Something I couldn't name. I closed my eyes. I saw flashes. The HOA. The drones. Margaret's eyes. My brother's face. The black SUV. The helicopter. All tangled together. I opened my eyes. The crate. The destroyed drones. Nothing left. But the red light. A flicker deep in the rubble. One tiny, pulsing dot. Alive. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. Couldn't. Coming up. Nothing. There's no coming up. A sound behind me. A whisper. Too soft. Not human. I turned. Nothing. I blinked. And then the floor shifted. The warehouse groaned. Not like collapsing, like breathing. My pulse stopped. I reached for my brother. He wasn't there. Margaret laughed. Not loud. Not clear. Just a sound that crawled under my skin. I ran to the exit. Doors locked. Windows sealed. The air thickened. The shadows moved faster than I could react. I stopped. Everything froze. And then, a flash, bright, sudden, blinding. I screamed. And it ended. No one knew what had happened. Not the agents. Not the neighbors. Not me. Only the red dot pulsed. Alone, waiting,